Well, looks like I'm going to have to talk about this then. I don't usually want to comment on the near constant doom-mongering that basically every single Games Workshop product gets. It seems that no matter what the format, no matter what the game system, games in the eyes of the community are simultaneously alive and dead, in such a way as to give Schrodinger himself a pause for concern. But in the case of Warcry, I feel like a lot of stuff has happened in the last few weeks, and when I have players coming up to me saying, oh, I really wanted to get into the game, I wanted to buy these warbands and I wanted to play, but I've heard on the internet somewhere, or there are rumors, or a friend of a friend who's high up in Games Workshop has said this, that Warcry is basically dying as a game, and I'm not going to get into it, that kind of means that I need to, well, get off my ass and talk about it myself. Because rumors are one thing, but when it starts to actually impact people trying to get into the game and trying to enjoy the game as it is, I feel like you kind of need a balancing voice to kind of say, okay, let's all calm down a bit. The sky isn't falling. So that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to look at everything that has been happening, and I'm going to basically tell you why Warcry isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Okay, so let's start with probably the single biggest piece of news that has kind of prompted this mass hysteria about the game shutting down, it'll never be around again, and how you'll never be able to play with your warbands, and that's basically it. Of course, we're talking about the news that Games Workshop is going to discontinue a whole bunch of warbands. This is specifically for Age of Sigmar. They're not going to be selling those anymore, and effectively the role of these warbands in your Slaves to Darkness armies are going to be replaced by the new Dark Oath box. So what's actually going on? Well, a lot of people have taken this and taken the news that these warbands are going to be discontinued as an indication that they've basically been removed from the game entirely. In effect, I'm paraphrasing here, all that's actually happening is that because Dark Oath are coming out, all of these warbands, which if you went onto Games Workshop's website and you tried to buy these warbands, they were basically out of stock all the time anyway. And then when they came back in stock, maybe 3 months or 6 months down the line, they go back on sale, they disappear almost instantly. The Age of Sigmar crowd would be snapping them up because they were cheaper and they were effectively better than the standard really cheap offerings that Slaves to Darkness had in Chaos. So you'll notice basically all of the unaligned Warcry warbands are effectively going out of production. Now this doesn't mean that the rules are gone. They're not gone. Even in Age of Sigmar, the rules, they're going to be match play legal all the way up to next summer, and then after that, they're going to be retired to Legends. Now, what does this mean for Warcry itself? Absolutely nothing. The article didn't mention Warcry at all, so basically all of the rules for these warbands are still legal to use up until the point where Games Workshop decides that they want to discontinue them. But something that I want to remind you guys is that we are still using Bladeborn fighters that are legal, that have not been on sale for years and years. Games Workshop famously does not like to remove support for models that people already have because it fosters a lot of bad will and bad sentiment in the community. You can still play them in Warcry, absolutely fine, and you can continue to play them up until there's some big change that basically says that you can't. And we have absolutely no rumors about that. We have absolutely no inkling that that's going to happen anytime soon, especially not in the next year when these warbands are still legal for Age of Sigmar. So yeah, I think that we don't need to worry about these warbands disappearing just yet. Now, secondly, and probably most frustrating for me, is people coming forward and saying that there's absolutely no tournaments, there's basically nothing going on for Warcry. Just last week, in the kind of timescales that I'm recording this, we had a big old event going on at Warhammer World. The next one coming up is on June 30th, and that's going to be a weekend event. The last tournament that I went to was 50 players. We had Adepticon, which was also this month. That was touching 50 players with not one but two events. They did a competitive and a casual event, both packed out, both of them. Nova's coming up. We just had Warcry happen out in Poland, and we've got Morde-Cry happening every single quarter. There are events happening. It's obvious there are events happening. It's just, if you take a look at Games Workshop's in-house calendar, they're going to be showing you events 3 months in advance. People has taken the fact that there are no Warcry events on there to mean, oh, Warcry isn't supported as a game, we're never going to have events, that kind of thing. But the reason why there are no events on there is that in-house, Games Workshop's one is happening already. The next one isn't likely to happen until September or October, so the tickets won't be on sale yet. If you go back and you look at the previous article, then you'll see all of the Warhammer World Warcry events up there. This kind of perception that events aren't happening, therefore Warcry should be dying, kind of goes back to what we saw at Warhammer Fest last year. During that panel, which again, Warhammer Fest, the biggest Warcry event ever to happen, and now we're consistently hitting 50, 50, 50 each and every time we have one of these big convention events happen. Panel there basically said, okay, well, we didn't know that Warcry was this popular. That's why we basically haven't scheduled any events on there. Remember, from Games Workshop's standpoint, Warcry is very much sold as a kind of casual game, so that's why they wouldn't be doing tournaments. But every time they do an event and it sells out, that gives them more and more of an impetus to actually put on events in the future. Games Workshop doesn't organize these things, 1 month in advance, 2 months in advance. They're basically organized 6 months to a year in advance. So any events that are happening now would have been scheduled in probably sometime last year. What can we do as a community to kind of make things a little bit easier for Games Workshop? I would say that even if you are a casual player, try and go to some of these events, boost up the numbers, and to really show Games Workshop that yes, this is a game that people are playing. Now, the way that some people have been talking is like Warcry itself hasn't been getting any support and nothing's actually been happening. But when you actually break it down and you look at what's actually been going on, Warcry has had, 2 double boxes just been released. There is one more coming. We've got the Bone Centaurs and we have the Infected Sylvaneth coming out, so those are going to be really cool. We've just had a big old drop of Warhammer Underworlds content coming into the game. I think there was something like 8 Underworlds warbands we had only just last week, so that's really good. We know that there are events happening. We know that there is more stuff going on. We know that there is more product coming out. So there really isn't any argument to say that Warcry itself is going to be going anywhere. This actually bridges quite neatly into the next thing that I want to talk about, in that Games Workshop finds it extremely hard to know what product is being sold for Warcry and what isn't. So in Warcry at the moment, we have access to basically all of the normal-ish Age of Sigmar miniatures, and we have access to all of the Warhammer Underworlds miniatures. Okay, if I go out and buy any of that stuff, that's not a Warcry sale. The only things that are Warcry sales are the big boxes, the double boxes, the bespoke warbands, and any terrain that's specific for Warcry that they released. So something like the Sundered Scales set. And this poses a really big problem, because when you look on the internet and you see, you shouldn't buy this or you shouldn't buy that because the box set is going to be released in 3 months' time and you're going to be able to buy the boxes individually, and those boxes don't sell, that all feeds back into Games Workshop's big old machine, and it says, okay, well, Warcry isn't as popular as we think it is. Now, Kill Team does not have this problem, and the reason being is that all of the bespoke kill teams have left all of the compendium teams that you can make up with just your basic Warhammer 40k stuff. They've all left them in the dust, and no one plays them anymore. There are a couple that may still be competitive, but for the most part, it's not happening. In Warcry, though, everything is on a much more even footing, which means a bigger variety of stuff is played. Again, what can we do as a community? Try and go to events, and to really show that, yes, this is a game that people are playing. Some people are saying, Games Workshop games are on a 3-year cycle, so we are expecting a new edition or a new version or a new whatever of Warcry to come out at some point next year. That may or that may not be the case. The only people who know that are the game devs up in Games Workshop HQ, and you know what they decide is as labyrinthine as anything can be. So nobody knows that. And even if we don't get a new version of Warcry next year, I think of games like Necromunda, I think of games like Blood Bowl. They're still going strong, and they basically haven't had a version update in the last 3 years. Ash Wastes was basically an expansion onto the base Necromunda game. They've been getting new books, they've been getting small, incremental updates, but in terms of massive version change, it basically hasn't happened, and they're sitting with kind of the same starter sets that they always have. Games Workshop needs a skirmish-style game for their Age of Sigmar IP, kind of as the gateway into the main game proper, so that's basically what Warcry is doing at the moment. There's been a rumor from some guy who apparently knows something from someone that Warcry is going to get axed and it's going to be replaced with this all new kind of Morde-Cry style, kill team style game. Again, No one knows, really. And for those people who are calling on Mordheim to come back and who are really annoyed that Warcry wasn't Mordheim, if you haven't played that game in the last 20 years since Mordheim went, I feel like we should go and revisit those rules again. They are very much aged. The combat system is really clunky, and yeah, it hasn't aged quite as well as you may think it has. What it did have is a ton of character and a ton of depth and a richness that you basically don't see in Games Workshop games nowadays. But all of that doesn't really translate into a really good tabletop experience. There are some people who would prefer Warcry to be more like Kill Team, but to them I say, go play Kill Team. It exists. It's a good game. Warcry is a very different beast, and you know what? If you like it, you like it, and if you like to play it, you like to play it. You kind of just, from my point of view, need to show Games Workshop that you are playing it, and there are only two ways to do that, either through money or turning up to events and showing actual support for the game, even if you are just a beer and pretzels tabletop casual gamer. It's a bit of a rambling rant for today about a whole bunch of different things. But yeah, for me, I'm absolutely not worried. I am still having Warcry as the focus of my channel. I'm not going to jump over to Kill Team or jump over to some other game. Don't you guys worry about that. But anyway, yes, that's been it from me for today. As always, I've been I10, and this has been Off Meta Musings, and I'll see you next time.